Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rough Assembly and Back2 Presents ADR panel discussion with all these fabulous people that you can see in front of you. My name is Nia Hughes. I'm the Back2 organizing official who has been working with the post-production facilities branch for the last 3 years, I think it is. And we're very happy to welcome you. I'm just going to go through a couple of bits of housekeeping, if that's okay. Everyone's on mute and everyone's mics are off. I am going to try and find Mike, one of the panelists, in the participant list, and then hopefully we can bring them up. The way it's going to work is Steve Little, who sits on the Back2 committee for the post-sound crew of the industry, is going to be your host. Steve and I have one thing in common, and that is that we love a chat. But in this case, we only have a couple of hours, and so a lot to get through, and a spectacular amount of panel members. So I'm going to be what's the word? Timing Steve. And if you notice that I'm kind of moving stuff along, that's because we may be falling behind, or because I'm conscious of time. So we are going to start off by doing very, very brief introductions throughout the panel, and then we're going to go into the discussion, and then after that we're going to have the Q&A. Please do not put your questions in the chat function. If you scroll at the bottom, there is a Q&A function. That's the only place we'll be taking questions from. So please put them in there. There's a special offer to join Back2 this evening. I'll put everything about that into the chat function, but we can also run over that at the end. So over to you, Steve Little. Well done for putting all of this together.
Thank you, Nia. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name's Steve Little. As Nia said, I'm a freelance dialogue and ADR editor, and I help run the branch, the post-production and facilities branch. The branch is made up of professionals in the picture side and the sound side, so all the picture editors, the sound editors, all the various assistants, trainees, re-record mixers, all that sort of thing, and we are freelancers or facility employees. We gather around the website, which is www.therroughassembly.com. Loads of benefits to being a union member. I'll not go into them all, but at the minute it's a financial advice mainly if you're an employee, a sole trader, limited company, that sort of thing, so we can give you tons of advice on what should be happening regards furloughing, all that kind of thing. And I think more importantly than that, for a lot of the people in the audience, is you make contact with industry professionals like you see before you, because we're always open, we're easily contactable, and we're happy to chat on the phone. Okay, yeah, Nia mentioned we've set up these weekly webinars, which will be covering a variety of subjects in picture and sound post. So yeah, keep an eye on the website and just tune in if things are of interest to you. So that brings me on to this first webinar with the wonderfully talented Dark Crystal ADR panel. So if I can just ask Gemma to introduce herself, please, and give me a brief rundown of your role on the job.
Hello. Oh, sorry, I dropped out there. Sorry. Hi, I'm Gemma Nicholson. I am a post supervisor and coordinator. On this project, I was the principally in charge of all the ADR bookings and coordinating with the production and the agents and the actors to make sure that we got all the actors booked into all their sessions, etc. So I was managing everything from the studios to, as I said, liaising with everybody to make sure it all happened.
Okay, cool. Tim, on to you next, please. Mr. Hans.
Tim Hans, supervising dialogue or ADR editor on the show. My role was to keep everybody in check, actually. Record stuff, make sure everything was queued, make sure everything was fitted, make sure everything was delivered, deal with any recording issues, deal with any delivery issues regarding our fitted material, and do fixes from mixes. Yeah, that was it. So overseeing, but also on the coalface.
Thank you, Tim. And Sam Southwick.
Hi, I'm Sam. I was one of the ADR editors. Just basically whatever needed fitting. It was just kind of had a list of all the characters, so whatever was thrown. So it was just editing through.
Thank you, Sam. And Adele.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name's Adele. Same deal as Sam, really. I'm a dialogue and ADR editor, and I think I was on the job for a month and a half, fitting lots and lots of ADR.
Yeah, lots of ADR. Amy.
Hello. I again with the lovely two ladies there. I was an ADR editor. I was on it for about 5 months, up until I went into labour and had to leave. I also helped out the assistants when they first came on to filter out and get some sort of finding system in process.
Thank you, Amy. And James?
Hey, yeah, I'm James. I was an assistant sound editor. So my job, along with Joe, who will also introduce herself, was to keep all these guys working. That is to say, editing recordings, getting cues to the studios to be recorded, just kind of keeping the wheel turning in the background.
Thank you, James. And Joe?
Hiya, I'm Joe. I'm a freelance assistant sound editor and sound editor. And yeah, on this job, as well as James, I was an assistant sound editor. And yeah, basically kind of making sure all of the sound editors had everything they needed, everything was up to date, that we would liaise with the picture department to make sure everything kind of worked so that everyone could, you know, do their magic.
Thank you, Joe. And have we got Mike?
He says no.
Nope. Well, I'll introduce Mike Tehrani. Hopefully we'll get him on. He was one of the ADR recordists, works at a facility called Goldcrest. And Lottie was his recordist in crime. Lottie, if you could introduce yourself.
Hiya, yeah. I'm an ADR recordist at Goldcrest, and my main role was assisting Mike in recording the ADR. That involved me operating the Pro Tools and yeah.
Sorry, Steve. We do have Mike. I've added him. So Mike, can you talk now? I've unmuted you as well.
Hello, can you all hear me?
There you go.
Looking good, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Mike, have you got your video?
I can't seem to get the video on, but...
Okay, well, if you just want to give us a quick introduction.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm Mike Tehrani. I work at Goldcrest Post-Production in London. And yeah, as Lottie says, I was partnered with her to record all the ADR, or most of the ADR on this show.
Thank you very much. And we've just had a message from Chris Durfee, who is a production sound recordist for Dark Crystal, who's on. So everyone give him a wave. Hiya.
Hi, Chris.
Okay, so Tim, back to you. For a bit of background, could you give us a quick explanation or rundown of how the ADR process for something like Dark Crystal is different from a regular animation or a regular feature film?
Yeah. Okay. So ordinarily on a feature film or a drama, TV drama, you would have lines of dialogue which are not clear or need to be added. Could be noise on them, could be medieval scene and you've got a motorway in the background, heavy wind, battle sequences, you've got explosions. So lines will be re-recorded. And what we'll do is we'll cue those lines up, provide the picture to Mike and Lottie, and we will go into the studio with the talent and record those lines. We use cue sheets. Here's a cue sheet where you'll have the production name, what's going on, time codes, the actual line, and then we'll do some circled takes saying I've actually been it. This is just a group thing, so it's you can't see anybody famous on there. That's what we do with cinema and TV drama. If it's an animation, it's a slightly different route around in that we will record beforehand and edit it like a radio play and then take away those recordings and make, well, computer-based dope sheets now, which are the mouth movements. And then you animate to the pre-recorded material. What made Dark Crystal different is that Chris will attest to, was on the location recording all the sound. All of the puppets were operated by puppeteers who are actors of their own standing, but it was always intended that the voices would be replaced by named cast, and so everything that Chris recorded on location was ultimately going to end up in the bin. Now, what's interesting about Dark Crystal is that since everything was going to be re-recorded, it became, we call it ADR, but in fact it's production sound. We were replacing the production sound entirely, so it's almost like shooting the entire film all over again. The idea ADR, which for those of you who don't know, is called, it's automated dialogue replacement. There's a whole technical explanation behind that, but that's what it is, and it's the process of how we record it. So Mike and Lottie can fill you in on all that more. So what we had was 10 episodes. Every single character had to be re-recorded, every single line that they did, every effort, every breath, and sometimes we even changed the dialogue that was recorded originally to something else. So it was based on mouth movements. James will complete you on that one. So just to get put in perspective, for drama, to TV drama is probably less so, but a feature film, anything between 100 cues and maybe, I don't know, 500 cues you would re-record. For the whole season of Dark Crystal, we had 10,000 scripted lines to re-record, and that does not include the breaths, efforts, and various other bits and pieces we do. So 10,000, you get your head around that. That's why you see so many people on the screen here.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so Gemma, would you, as you've said, you were organising just the logistics of all that. Would you talk us through some of that and what you were responsible for?
Yeah, I was responsible for booking the ADR sessions. So that included, to start with, my process was very much talking with the production, speaking to them about who was being cast at various different times. We had approximately 35 principal cast members, but a lot more characters, as James will talk about later. We had, of those 35 main principal cast members, I would have said that they were all very, very high profile actors and actresses. So they were all very difficult people to get hold of. They were all on various different productions, and we had to sneak them into ADR theatres when they were free, and try and work around everybody else's schedule. So we had 35 different schedules that we were working around to get to our schedule. Now, we did this ADR over approximately 6-7 months in total. And we had, as Tim said, there was 10,000 cues, but that translated to just under 1,000 hours of ADR. And we would do these sessions in 4-hour blocks. So one session would be a 4-hour block. Different people were on different types of contracts, which is quite an important point. Some were on SAG contracts, which is an American Actors contract, and some were on equity contracts. And so trying to keep a track of who was on which contract, and depending on which contract you were on, depended on the type of hours you were allowed to do, the breaks that you needed, the type of sessions you did, and how many ADR hours or how many episodes you were allowed to do in one session. So we had to bear all of this in mind in the background, so that we were not ever asking more of an actor than their contract stipulated. So that was the part in the background. Obviously, we would be doing work with Goldcrest with Mike and Lottie. They were our principal studio, and we did the vast majority of our work over at Goldcrest. But we also did a huge amount of work over Source Connect with different studios in New York, LA, and London. And so we were often booking theatres in multiple time zones and making sure that we had an appropriate ADR editor to always attend. At times we were doing, I think the minimum ADR that we were doing a week would be 10 to 30 hours. And then the most we did was 60 hours in a week, I think, 1 week. So it was pretty hardcore, and the team did an incredible job. So that was my.
And weren't you shooting in 3 different locations worldwide at one point?
Yeah, we had a grand tour that our director did. So he went from London to New York to LA in a very short period of time. So we did. We were often doing a full day's worth of ADR, and then by a full day I mean 8 hours worth of ADR through the day, and then we will go on and do a full 8 hours in LA. So we were shooting with multiple people, and also we always had to be attended. So Louis, our director, was an absolute trooper who managed to do incredibly well, operating on multiple time zones at once. In fact, sometimes getting very little sleep because of it. But we also had Jeff, who was one of the writers on the show, who also helped out, and it was a group effort. So yeah,
a mammoth group effort.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you, Tim, if I could. Would you just talk a bit about, once you're in the theatre and you start the shooting process, what sort of challenges that presented, just in terms of A-listers recreating something that isn't necessarily how they would have said it, that sort of thing, those challenges there? Yeah,
okay. So, I mean, the first thing is actually finding a character voice, because these people didn't necessarily have prep beforehand to decide. A few of the characters in there, the Chamberlain, were very much as the original film, the 1980s film. And Augra, who also, they were different people playing the voices, but they were performed with the same character voices because they were kind of become well known, whereas some of the other character voices not so much. But anyway, we had to find character voices. So quite often the very first session, or at least a big chunk of the first session, would be going over the same lines many times, just trying to find a way of performing it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Chris, who recorded all the production sound very nicely, actually, given the situation, we had all the puppeteers' voices to use as a basis. Now, with ordinary ADR, you've performed the line yourself, you know the situation, you know the location, you know the other characters, and so getting back into that performance is a more straightforward, albeit it could be 6-7 months later. It is a sort of more straightforward approach. You understand your own performance nature. The problem with this is that the puppeteers had to give voice to the characters too. So they chose to go a particular route. Now, some of them were quite straightforward. They weren't complicated. In fact, Augra was revoiced by the actress who played her herself. So that was a little more straightforward. But in other cases, there was a choice of going in a particular direction in terms of your delivery. And then you bring in your new name cast who go, hang on a minute, I would never have played that line that way. But you're now committed to a sync. So the mouth is moving. So you're committed to delivering the line at the same pace, albeit with a new voice and a new character. So some of the actors found the whole process quite difficult anyway, getting in sync with a mouth that kind of does this. But I'm sure everyone else will give you more detail on the variety of mouths, which all did different things. And then also the timing. One actress I worked with found it very difficult with a puppeteer who'd done a very slow delivery. Her natural instinct was to do something much faster and perhaps a little kind of flatter. And this was a little bit more expressive and slow. That became quite a problem. It took us quite a while to figure that one out. And then one of the characters was played quite a dark, sort of serious, quite evil sounding kind of voice, whereas the actor that came in said, yeah, the kind of thing with playing evil characters, and he's played a lot of them, is that you don't be kind of evil, you actually be kind of really normal, because, you know, saying, right, take those 3 outside and kill them is much more powerful than, right, take those 3 outside and kill them, because that's kind of expected. So if you do it like, you know, just flippant, it doesn't matter if they're meaningless to you, suddenly it's much darker. So we had a kind of contrast there. So then you've just got volumes, just 10 episodes with just thousands of lines to record. It's just it's a mammoth task. Also, one of our cast members had put so much energy into his delivery of the voice that he actually ran out of voice. Usually we have 4-hour sessions. By about 3 hours in, he was shot. He just couldn't do anymore. It was guzzling water. And then other people...
I'd just add to that, there were several actors actually that required breaks in between. Some of the American actors, I couldn't book them on consecutive days. It would have to be that they would have to have a scheduled break. And there was one actor that who was also who was a brilliant actor. I think he's the one you're referring to, but he made sure that he always had a day and a half in between, and we would have to import him down from the north of England. So we would have him staying overnight, but we'd have to book his sessions so that they were appropriately spaced, so that he had enough time to get over the stress.
Recovery.
Yeah.
Recovery periods. The thing is, anyone who's doing voice characterization, I've done a little bit in my time. If you go down a particular route with your throat, it doesn't take long before you can't actually say the lines anymore. You just can't get that voice back. You've got a short span of time. Some other people found it very difficult to get in sync. Everybody in the end was getting very good at it, or was very good at it. Perhaps one of the only people who found, I thought, was in a natural environment was Mark Hamill, who played the scientist, and he just walked in and did it in an extraordinary way. Everything was kind of so close to sync, it was ridiculous. But he's very experienced as a voice actor. That's been his mainstay for the last however many years. Some of these other people have not done that before. So there's a huge kind of, one other thing, very important thing. When you're playing these performances, remember, of course, that you are performing against a puppeteer's voice. Not only the voice that you're replacing, but the other puppets are the puppeteer's voices. So we were building the whole thing back together. So your lines were in response to deliveries that hadn't yet been recorded, or maybe had been recorded by the new actor, but we hadn't fitted it yet. So everyone's it's blind leading the blind a lot of the time. We didn't have the time to get it ready. Sometimes we might have the recording from the previous day. We could just kind of run it along to give an idea. But otherwise, we were taking performances that we had on the guide. So things could be distinctly different by the time it reached the mix and what you will have seen.
Thank you. On to Amy, if I can, please. So I remember while I was on, you working with the Skeksis characters a lot, which are the ones with the massive beaks, like that. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that those particular puppets presented for you?
Sure. So Steve and I were brought on quite early, and the first kind of principal characters that we shot were the Skeksis in volume. For those of you who haven't seen it, the Skeksis are kind of like a mixture between a crocodile, lizard, and vulture, with these huge beaks. And sometimes they've got really long beaks and sometimes really short, stubby ones. So being an ADR editor, cutting for beaks isn't an unusual thing to do. So there were a few issues, and like Tim was saying, that the actors, they're listening to a puppeteer's voice whilst watching the screen, trying to mimic a flappy mouth going like that constantly. So it threw up so many hurdles, and a lot of the early takes that they were doing was just getting into the flow of it. And because we were on quite early, it took a little bit of time for them to ramp up into it. One of the problems with beak flaps that we've all come across, because everyone here has had a go at the Skeksis at some point, is the flaps didn't necessarily match the amount of words or syllables the lines required. So for instance, there would be the Emperor, who is the leader of the Skeksis. He would shout Chamberlain, which would be 3 syllables, so it'd be Chamberlain, and that's what you would need. But the way it was performed, sometimes it would be Chamberlain doing that. So you've got 5 lip slaps for a 3-syllable word, and there's only so much an actor can do with that. It's one word. So when the recording got back to us, we had to quickly learn type of cheats that you need to make it work better. So doing inhales and exhales after every line, or vocalizations were super, super helpful to kind of make sure that you could make it look sort of kind of believable. And then again, sometimes there were not enough flaps for the amount of words. And then in that instance, it would be, can we shorten syllables? How much time stretching can you get away with? Because it's paramount to keep the actor's performance and the director's choice as intact as possible. So we're doing a lot of, personally I was using Isotope RX 7 for my compressing any kind of sound. Just the time stretch was a little bit smoother, and you could be a little bit more liberal with it without kind of detrimentally changing the performance. Also throughout the process, the scripts, which James will go into later, was being updated and changed quite frequently. So sometimes what was said originally wasn't what came in, and you add 1 or 2 words and it changes everything. For someone who's done the right amount of beak moves with not the right amount of words, it poses its own kind of challenges to make it work. And I think you had to be slightly forgiving when it came to all of the characters, not just the Skeksis. At some point it was more important that the line and the content got through rather than it visually always syncing. So you did have to forgive yourself on some lines, but not all of them, obviously. There were also kind of creative ads. So like Tim was saying, the actors would come in, and for such a huge amount of time, the director might come in a couple of days later and be like, oh, can we try it this way? So for instance, we had, what's his name? Michael Keegan come in. He played the ritual master. And after one day of really good shooting, some ADR came in the next day, and the first thing the director said was, do you know, it'd be great if we could have some wheezing with this character. And it really did work. It was brilliant. But then you still have an entire day's worth of ADR that's been shot that doesn't have that. So not only did the performance change, but everything about his voice. So it was about, and you can't go back with the amount of time we have with all these people, you can't go back and redo it. So it's a case of what can we take from the newly recorded stuff and implement it in the previous recorded stuff, which it worked brilliantly. The wheezing really added to the character. So it was hard but fun. Also, when all the Skeksis were in one scene together, their mouths would just constantly kind of be moving, and because it was paramount for all the written lines to get in, it's just so vast. So when you have all of the Skeksis there and you've lined them all up, you've edited them all independently, press play, it's just a kind of wall of sound that you can't quite get past. So, and it's that's something you really don't want to send to a mixer. They've got a mammoth job themselves to get it done. So it was a case of what can you kind of wheedle out but keep the integrity of the scene and the intention of it, but making sure that important lines were still being heard. So it's finding what was the important line, what can we take out, what can we adjust, because it was creating kind of like its own kind of crowd session. So I think the best thing with working on this project was the fact that there are so many ADR editors. Usually we're quite lone wolves. You kind of edit your stuff and go to the stage, and then you're left to people thinking your sync is rubbish or starting again or whatever. But on this one, because the process was so fluid, there's so many of us, it meant that I could edit a scene and be like, oh, it's not quite working, and I'd get Tim to come in or send it to Nina Hartzone or even Steve and be like, does this work for you guys? What do you think? And them doing a couple of tweaks might work, because it was fairly, you did kind of have to, I think the sync perception, because of the beak movements, it's quite open to interpretation, whether does it start on quite mouth open, does it start on the shut, is it lagging, and how some people seem to see sync, some people see it differently. So it was amazing that we could bounce off when we've got such a difficult type of mouth movement to cover. But yeah, I think that's the main.
Yeah, I just found it was the most time-consuming thing I'd ever done, where you get normal ADR, and if the actor's replacing what they said on the day, which is on the guide track, you can fit that, you shoot it really well, and you can fit it really quickly. Some of these lines, you could spend an hour on one single line, just doing it that way, then doing it a different way, then doing it another way, and you're trying 3 or 4 different ways until you sort of wheedle down, as you say, adding a little breath there or a reaction at the end to just fill all the beak flaps, because some of the different puppeteers have very different styles, and how they even said the words and flapped the beaks and did all the animatronics and stuff at the same time. It was absolutely awe-inspiring. Yeah, and it was just the most time-consuming, mammoth task I think any of us have ever been a part of.
Yeah, you would do a line and you spend a lot of time putting some love into it. And you're like, yeah, I've got it. I'm going to go get a coffee. You come back, press play, and you're like, nope.
And it's absolutely
that one again.
Yeah. It was amazing. Thank you, Amy. So on to Sam, please. I know you remembered being involved in fitting the character of the Wanderer, which was voiced by Bill Hader, a wonderful actor. Can you just talk about that? And I mean, he was just incredible at all the extra efforts and this big grab bag of breaths and reactions and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he and the Heretic were one of the first characters I fitted, and like you say, you know, you start off fitting all the words, and like the Heretic has a lot of words, and then you go through and you realise that the people doing the voices have done lots of characteristics, you know, and laughs and grunts and efforts, and that builds with the character that the puppeteers have built. So you're trying to make the words and the characteristics fit in. And so I just remember I spent hours just going through all the takes, you know, and making markers, you know, oh, that's a good laugh, that's a good sigh, that's a good effort, you know, so that having fitted all the words, you could then build the character with all the sounds. So it was almost a bit like effects editing, but it was kind of like building it up. Whereas, you know, normally in ADR, the actor has already brought that to the sync, whereas this is being done during the session. And sometimes, you know, if a character's laughing, it's just, you know, you want to be able to get the right laugh, so you go through all the different. So that was a really fun part, which is obviously everything takes a lot longer and to do that than doing a gelfling, you know, for example. But you know, it's brilliant being able to build it up and make that character try and build as much from what's been recorded from the actor.
Yeah, so I mean, like everyone just had a massive input in creating these characters. It's all the little reactions and laughs and presence that create that personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, on to Adele, if I can, please. I think we all sort of, I mean, absolutely loved it, but went through a process of learning kind of how to do it. Tim's very experienced at animation. He'd done it an awful lot before. A lot of the rest of us hadn't. My first week, I just thought everything I'd done was absolutely terrible. So can you just talk a little bit about the technical process and the skills needed and what you found you had to learn?
Yeah, I mean, I really love fitting ADR and, well, human normal drama ADR. And what I love about it is that when a line works, you're like, yes, it works, it's great. But in this, I just realized about half an hour into the job that everything I knew I had to throw out the window about fitting normal ADR, because it was not going to be the same. Because for a start, you don't have the waveforms to match, you know, like we were saying before, like the guide track from the day. That would be the way I would normally just start fitting a line of ADR, is just get it in sync with the waveforms. But we didn't have any of that. So I sort of figured out that, yes, we needed to fit with the beak and the mouth, but I actually got into sort of quite a rhythm of like just watching the puppets sort of just rhythms and movements. And for me, that was how I sort of found how they should talk, because you sort of just went with their natural flow. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really great challenge to do. I think the other thing to think about is that normally on a job, I don't know what everyone else would think, but you sort of, if you fit 10 cues an hour, you're on a good wave, you know, that's sort of quite a good deal. On this, I remember I think I did took me an hour to fit a cue or something, and I think Tim could see me sweating. He came over and he said, don't worry, it's totally different to a normal job, you know. And I think if you do 5 cues an hour, you're lucky. And I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, because you just had to, it was just totally different to anything I'd done before. A big challenge, but with a great crew and fantastic material, you know, like the material was brilliant. And yeah, it was just a really great job to be a part of.
Yeah, fantastic learning.
Yeah, I'd do it again. You know, it was great, really good.
Yeah, I've just seen Mr. Nielsen's on.
Yeah, I saw that.
Hello, Tim.
Hello.
Just a quick question for him. Would you do it all again?
Yeah, I'd do it all again.
Yes. Agree on that.
It does give you like panicky flashbacks. Kind of. I do remember sitting in the corner of the room with my head in my hands at one point.
Yeah, I think I mean, the other thing is that I definitely talked to myself a lot on this job, because you'd sort of be going, how, you know, doing the mouth movements, trying to figure out if it would fit the beaks. You know, they're not mouths, they're beaks, and some of them have tongues, some of them don't, and you kind of need, like as Amy and Sam said, all this stuff sort of needed to be considered creatively and technically, and it just needed to flow. I think that was sort of one of the main things.
I remember just looking in one of my reflective monitors and just mouthing lines really slowly over and over again, trying to work out where the sound would best, which shape of mouth would be best for it to start on, and that sort of things. Yeah, it was incredible. Okay, thank you, all of you. James and Joe, I think everyone would agree that you guys were the rocks that everyone just clung to, the assistants. Just incredible job. James, I think it was your first role as an assistant. I don't think you quite realised what you did.
I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself in for.
It was just unbelievable. So just for those watching, talk us through what you were responsible for, what your processes were, like the software, just the technical process of what you were doing and how you kept the wheels on the bus.
Yeah, so obviously everyone's spoken about how many lines there were to record, and you know, was it 10,000 across the series? So it was my job to get all those lines to the studio to be recorded. So the first process would be to get an episode, and in Pro Tools you have a track for every single character, and then every time you need an effort or a line, you would create a clip and you just go through the whole episode and build that up until by the end you've got this sort of map of every sound that they're making vocally in the show, which was just amazing to look at the end, because you could jump down the timeline and see who's speaking when and get a real sense for structure, which is just not a way I'd looked at a show at all before. But once you've done all that in Pro Tools, I developed a very close relationship with something called EdiQ, which is how we got all the cues, the lines to be recorded kind of out of Pro Tools onto cue sheets that Tim showed you earlier. So once we'd kind of built the script in Pro Tools and using EdiQ to kind of create unique cue IDs for all these lines, they'd kind of be ready to go to the studio. But there was one big consideration, which was that because these are puppets and it's kind of mouth flaps, and you can technically say anything with a mouth flap. You could either say, hello, how are you? Or hello, I hate you. You can change it. So the script was a sort of evolving, moving beast. So after I'd queued up an episode, I would then send that to the writer, Jeff, who would then have an opportunity to make changes and sort of be able to kind of if a line wasn't quite working or it didn't quite fit, or just another chance to be creative, they might change a line. So that script would then come back to me with Jeff's approval, and then it would go off to the studios to be recorded. So it was kind of this constant process of saying, right, well, what did they say on set? Are we keeping that, or are we slightly changing that? And then getting it to the studio. And this process kind of went on the whole time, but just because it could. So you could have recorded 8 episodes with a character, and then you watch it, the first episode, and you think, oh, wouldn't it be great if they said this was slightly different? So then you could revise it, and as long as it fit with the puppet's movement, you could do it. So it made the whole process just a lot more complicated, and there was a lot more to keep track of. I think there was 127 unique characters, some of them with lots of lines, some of them with only one or two, but you still had to keep track of making sure that they were all correct. And yeah, you know, in a week where you've got 60 hours of ADR, and you know, it might be changing around which city it's in or XYZ, and then the lines change, and yeah, we all had to be very you know, there was lots of communicating and lots of back and forth, and it was, you had, you know, there was a real sense of we were all close together and had to work very closely together to make sure it could get done. So yeah, that was my job mainly.
Thank you. And Joe?
Yeah, and then I basically came on, I think James had been already on the project for a couple of months, and I came in, and at the point I came in, it was my main job initially was to kind of make sure that we were up to the latest versions, the same versions as the picture department. I don't think there had been a turnover from the picture department to the sound department, maybe like ever, or until apart from like the very first one. So we and James and everyone else was working to an old picture version. So for example, say that was version 1. James was queuing up everything according to version 1, but the picture department might have been at this point maybe like version 7. So what that meant was that, you know, the cues and timings and takes could have and definitely would have changed. So I basically set about trying to conform up to the latest version, basically bring us all up to scratch and up to date. So that meant going through all of the sessions, the cue sessions and the already edited and recorded sessions, and bringing them up to the latest version using a combination of EdiLoad and also Conformalizer, and also just manually, because there'd been so many cuts from, you know, the previous version we were working to the one that we were at. There had been so many like cuts, it was almost a new show really. So we would basically, from the picture department, we would get given EDLs, which is an edit decision list, which is essentially just a kind of a report of all of the in and out points of picture cuts. And then we can take an old one and a new one using EdiLoad or Conformalizer. You can kind of compare to see what the new cut is and what we have to do to then physically go into our Pro Tools sessions and just bring it all up to date. So it was a tough job, because there were like hundreds of tracks, millions of cues, and yeah, it was quite hefty, but then it was really satisfying to then get us all up to the latest version. And then of course we'd just get like new versions anyway, so we'd have to do it all over again. But between me and James, we kind of would make sure that the cues were up to scratch and working, sessions were all up to date, and yeah, that's kind of how we split it up. And we just would both kind of help each other out and do passes and watch the sessions once we'd recut and fixed them, just to make sure we hadn't missed anything, because there was so many rooms for error basically. Yeah, so that's kind of what we did.
And so you were all actually on the same floor as the picture department. Was that handy? Were you constantly in and out?
Yeah,
because you all had to have such a close relationship with the picture assistant editors, because it was them giving you the EDL, edit decision list, to recut the tracks, to create the new cue sheets to go to be recorded. So yeah. I assume it was brilliant for you to just nip along the corridor.
Yeah, because that's really unusual. Like usually picture and sound, they're, you know, in completely different places, mostly, not always, but it was really great, especially at something such a scale as this, because it's so much easier just being able to go into someone's room and just be like, what's this, or what version are you on, or where should we be? And it just it also meant we were just a great team, like a huge team, having a great time together as well, amidst all the chaos.
Yeah, we all remember it like that, totally.
Yeah.
Well, and because of the nature of the show, the problems we would have might be a bit different to another show. So it was so much, you know, the problem me and Joe had, or not problem, or challenge we had, was that lots of the if a line was going to change, it might be a burnt-in line on a QuickTime, and that would be something we'd have to get to know quite. We'd have to sort of watch out for those, and if we had any issue about those or query, it would be it's so easy to just walk and talk to the to editorial who just know everyone and everything that's going on, and they're kind of a useful hub. So instead of, you know, another email about a line of dialogue along with the 20 other emails you've got about dialogue, it was super useful to be able to just kind of be like, oh, that line that you're adding for this character, what's that all about? And then you could get the scoop, and you could just carry on. And it was great. Yeah, it was really useful.
Yeah, a little inside route.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is editorial. On to the actual recordists. Mike and Lottie, please.
Wow. Firstly, I forgot how much we all say mouth flaps on this job. That comes up a lot.
Yeah, and 10 points for anyone who says essence first.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, from our perspective, obviously this is, as Tim mentioned, this is very different to normal ADR. I mean, we're used to a boom and a radio as a standard setup, and you know, you can hear the production and hear sort of the distance of the boom that possibly you have to be at, the radio, if it's matching the radio on the production that we get supplied. Whereas this was different. It's a lot more like animation. So we stuck the same sort of principles. We used a Neumann U87, which is a large diaphragm condenser microphone. So you get a nice, rich, warm sound. But again, as Tim mentioned, this being very different animation, and where, you know, you can hit record, let them do their performance. This was mapping lip flaps and the Puppeteers version of the performance. And yeah, as said, they're actors in their own rights, and they came up with their own pacing choices, characterizations. So that leads the actors into a tricky path, because I think it's been mentioned already, they're stuck to the timing and the rhythm while trying to create their own performance and give their own character. So, you know, it's a lot of respect has to go to the actors that are able to pull this off. So yeah, so it meant that a lot of it was watching the scene, seeing how much of the scene to attack at once, what was manageable. Some actors like to run a whole scene as one. Some like to break it down, pick a line at a time, try and perfect the sync, and then perhaps at the end we'd try and get a full run, just so we had full performance with natural breaths in between, and keep it as real as possible. But this, of course, then means that what the actor hears in their headphones, it was different per actor. The majority wanted to hear how the scene was performed once, so they got the timings, and then they wanted to just hear everyone else's dialogue but their own that they were going to replace. So it was mine and Lottie's job to make sure the actors were comfortable in everything they were getting in their headphone feed. And, you know, of course, halfway through when Louis went to America, that then meant Skype as well. So you had Louis talking in their headphones throughout their performance as well, which was interesting. And, you know, he liked many a wild track. You know, we did the same line sometimes in one take. We did, you know, 10 takes upwards, and, you know, you can hear Louis saying, I like that. And Lottie will tell you more about how she went around marking that up as we went. But it was certainly fun watching the sun rise behind Louis as we were getting to the end of our day.
Yeah, well, we, like Mike said, we ended up doing quite a lot of wild takes, and with loads of versions and different performances. And Louis ended up picking quite a few from different wild tracks, so we ended up having quite a few to sync up, which was different from me. I usually it's one take and then I, you know, sync that up. So having like maybe 5 versions that are quite interesting to play back was different for me. And it was also quite different for me to sync up those takes, because as well as for the actor, it was the guide track that we were given often wasn't the same sync as what the actor was doing. So for me, usually I edit to a waveform. And that waveform is obviously very different because it's a different person, different performance, in some cases different lines. So I had to edit visually to the sync of the puppet, like the performance of the actor was trying to sync to the puppet. So that was quite different for me.
But I think where Lottie really helps me out in terms of what we fed the actor is in building a rough guide track of pre-recorded sessions. The actors, the more they came in, the more they were able to listen to a rough assembly of what a chosen to preferred takes. And she was slowly replacing the guide track of the puppeteers with the voices that it was actually going to be, and it gave the actors a better idea of what they were performing against. So they had a different performance, which then might take them in a different direction. Of course, all the lovely editors here actually went away and did all the fine tuning and went through every single recording, or 10,000 lines, God knows how many takes of those, to give you the finished products. But yeah, Lottie certainly was my savior throughout a lot of this, making my life a lot easier.
Yeah, just trying to piece together a performance for the actor to work against on the fly. Yeah, it's not something I would like to do.
She's a magician.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so to everyone, I think we've got a lot of film uni students on board tonight. Tim, it's probably a bit far in the past for you to think back to when you were that old, but could you give a short piece of advice, each of you, to the audience, something you wish you'd have known when you were starting out, or could be how best to use this period of downtime when basically none of us are working, which is why we're doing these webinars 24 hours a day. Yeah, so just everyone, a little piece of advice, or what they can be doing with this downtime. Okay, on to you, Tim, please.
Oh, thanks. What can you do with your time? Well, get on things like this for starters. Anything you can do to involve yourself with your chosen career path. Getting in touch with people, trying to join on these webinars, finding stuff out, putting things into practice. If you want to go and do sound effects, you're going on a walk, go record things. Get out there, get stuff, build a library. If you want to get into dialogue editing, start trying to communicate with idiots like us, or start trying to do some dialogue editing, shoot some stuff, get the Pro Tools system, start doing some stuff. Anything you can do to learn and make contact with people. It's a little tricky at the moment because nobody's really doing anything. Well, I am, but a few of us are. But yeah, it's kind of a strange time. So I just keep reading, keep looking, keep learning, and just get the more knowledge you can have. Just be a sponge, soak it all up. The more you know, the better you're going to be.
Okay, thank you. Gemma.
Thanks. I don't know quite how I'm going to follow that one. I do actually have a sound background. I worked as a sound editor before I went into post-supervising and coordinating. Worked with Amy actually, and I do think that you need to look carefully at where your strengths lie and where your strengths and where your weaknesses are. I think that I think sometimes something that you think you're very good at, or you could be very good at when you start out, you might not actually end up being that good at, or you may follow a path which takes you down a totally different route, which was right for me. I think sometimes a period of pause like this gives you a chance to reassess, and it gives you a chance to look at where your priorities are, your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and you're able to take stock. And I think it's a lovely point. You know, this is not a sound point, but I think it's a lovely time to really get to know yourself and to make sure that you know where you want to go. There's a lovely quote which is, you don't want to get to the top of the ladder and find out you've been leaning it against the wrong wall. And I think that sometimes right now you can find out, is this the right wall for you? Is this what you want to do? What do you love? Follow that.
Oh God, Gemma, I don't know what I want to do now. Okay, on to Amy.
I got two bits of advice, I guess. If you're interested in the ADR route, it is really great, and it's really satisfying when you get your characters in sync. And if it's something you haven't done before, go online, see if you haven't seen bad lip syncing, have a look at that, because it's people doing amazing things with voices which mouths don't quite work. If you can get hold of your favorite shows, just take them and try and revoice them, try and get the sync, this job was very much syncing visually, usually without not having the mods to go against. So if you can do any editing to practice or hone your skills, that'd be great. And my second bit of advice is don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's a very, very small industry, the sound industry. And I think it's quite easy. You can fall in with one group and then stay with them. And what you want to do is be as sociable as possible, meet and talk to anybody and everyone who's willing. We all love to talk, as you can tell from probably this webinar. Just talk to as many people as you can, get information, learn from them, and don't close yourself off to just, I want to work with that person only, because you will realize that you'll flip between groups, and the best way you can do that is by knowing them all. So just go and meet and talk to people. Everyone's usually quite nice, and we're all willing to listen. So yeah, hit us up.
Yeah, very true. Sam.
Hi. Yeah, I think definitely going and talking to people. I know Back2 runs different seminars where you can go and you can meet other people and you can learn stuff. I think listening to other people in the trade is definitely, it's really interesting, and it's helpful, and it gives you ideas. Definitely, reading, seeing lots of films, I think definitely it's just learning from other people. Everybody's got something else to say, something else to add, and that's it. It all helps. I remember when I very first started, an editor giving me just a couple of books to read. He said, "Oh, these are really helpful," and they're just really good for building what you're interested or what you like. And definitely, if you can download, I think there's a free Pro Tools you can download and just practice, just play around. That's a way to learn.
Thank you, Sam. Adele.
I would say know your craft. Watch films. Watch as many films as you can watch. Like if you're in a spotting session and the director says to you, "Oh, that scene in The Godfather where the train," and then you're like, "I've never seen The Godfather." It's just a terrible situation. Know your classics. I would just watch films as much as you can. It's raining. What best is there to do than stay in and watch 8 films a day? Not that I've been doing that, of course. And the other thing I would say is when you're sending emails to people, I went to a webinar thing the other day, and this woman gave a really good bit of advice, which was an email should not take longer than 15 seconds to read because it gets their attention. I personally can't stand it when I get really long essays, emails, and I'm sure that people mean well, but it's like, just give me a short thing about you. I want to know about you. I don't need to know everything. And maybe the third thing is filmmaking. As we've all talked about, filmmaking is super collaborative. And like Ron said, I think you just need to put yourself out there and meet people.
Can I just jump in, Adele, just on your point about watching films? Apparently, I was in Randy Tom, who is an incredible sound designer, has recommended Making Waves, which apparently is
oh yeah, it's a great documentary. Yeah, perfect way to start. Watch that. I think it's on YouTube. It's like £3. Making Waves, the cinematic art form or something, isn't it? Something. Yeah, it's a really good doc.
Okay, thank you. James and Joe.
Joe, do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. I'd say the first thing I'd say is, I started as a runner at Halo Post nearly 8 years ago, and one big piece of advice I'd say if you are starting out is let people know what you want to do, because people aren't necessarily going to ask, and they're not going to just assume what you want to do. So let people know what you want to do. And then, if something comes up, if an opportunity comes up, then they might well think of you. and just get to know Pro Tools, get good at it, get fast at it, like being, especially from like an assistant perspective, whether you go into like assistant sound editorial or mix teching as an assistant in a dubbing theatre, like you've just got to be fast at Pro Tools, and that just comes with doing it. So I'd say just do stuff in it, just learn stuff. Doesn't matter if you do it wrong, because you just do it again and then you'll learn, and it just builds up. So I would say, like, yeah, let people know what you want to do and just get good and fast at Pro Tools.
Cool.
That's good advice, because quite often you'll get sort of recordists in ADR studios who want to become dialogue editors or something like that, and nobody knows. They just think, oh, you're content doing that, that's your thing, you're really happy, you're not interested in doing something else. And then suddenly they go, oh yeah, I really fancy giving that a go 5 years later. And I really should have said that years ago.
Yeah.
Good advice, thank you. James?
So yeah, I went to Halo Post as well, and that's where I started as a runner. One thing I'd say is being a runner was great because you get to be in a company where they're doing picture and sound and editing and all different sorts of things. So you get exposed to a great variety of things. But what I would say is that it's quite important to pick a post house that's going to suit you as well. So now's a good opportunity to, pull up a list of all the post houses, look at what they do, what kind of things they make, and really target the ones that you like the look of, because maybe some don't do sound, or maybe some do film sound, and maybe some just do TV sound. And if you're not interested in film and you just want to do TV, don't end up at the wrong place. So if you can have an idea of what you really want to get out of this place, where you want to get some experience or be a runner, then that's useful. And yeah, I guess I'd echo what Adele said. My second piece of advice would be in terms of contacting people, because I've just been doing it the last couple of years. I've just become a freelance assistant sound editor. So make your email as short as physically possible, but as honest and direct as possible. And I think people thank you for that. I mean, I think the greatest and worst thing about film is that it's a very you get jobs by contacting people and talking to them, which makes it difficult to begin with, because who are these people, where are they, what's their email address? But it's also the best thing about it, because you're given a job because they've met you, they know you, they like you, you have a personal relationship with someone. So it's all, it's a good and bad thing about films. But given that is the way it is at the moment, it's meet people, talk to them, send them emails.
Can I just quickly add on to that? But there's also a fine line between like emailing people and introducing yourself and being really annoying. So like kind of balance it out. And if you've emailed someone, you haven't heard back, or they don't have any opportunities, wait a couple of months before you email them again. Just sort of, do it moderately, I think. And eventually it'll pay off.
Thank you both. Mike and Lottie.
I'll let Lottie go first.
Well, I basically agree with what everybody has already said. Learn Pro Tools, definitely. Learn your shortcuts, because that just speeds up everything. Get to know the Smart tool, because that's really useful. And watch webinars, play around with plugins. Now's the perfect time to get more in depth into knowing more about what your favorite plugins do. And there are some great ear training apps as well out there. So I'd say like hone in your ear and just practice.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat what everyone else said. I think there's some great advice already been put forward. I think one of the best bits of advice I got at the start was don't be afraid to ask what feels like a stupid question. If someone asks, do you know what this does? And you say yes, down the line when they ask you to do that thing and you have to go, remind me again, you look stupid. So it's absolutely fine. I still do it now. I still ask, other people at the facility, that these editors are with us now, still ask them questions. I think as long as you're constantly learning, constantly willing to learn, then you'll do great.
Great, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Right, let's have a quick look at the Q&As. Can all the panelists see them? Because some of them are addressed to certain members of the panel. I'll do the more specific ones first. The one for Adele from Joshua. Can you see that, Adele?
Yeah, yep. Okay. Yeah, so I went to the same uni that Joshua went to, which is a art college. It's very good. And what was it? Sorry, wondering what your path was after leaving university. I was super lucky in that I did an MA straight after my BA at the NFTS, which is the National Film and Television School. So I was really lucky to get into there, and from there I basically knocked on lots of doors and met lots of different people, and tried to get work experience in studios until someone caved in and gave me work experience, and then I wouldn't leave, so they gave me a job. Yeah, that was how I did it. There's lots of different ways.
Thank you, Adele. Was it ever a consideration to record the dialogue of the cast before shooting the scenes? Hansi?
Yeah, no, as far as I'm aware. So to give you a perspective of how the Puppeteers work, because whilst we're in the process of dealing with all of this, there was often the question of, surely there's an easier way to do this. And so I actually talked to some of the Puppeteers. So the ones in the big costumes, the Skeksis and Augra, they actually had 3 microphone feeds. So what would happen? So they would hear the voice of the other actor they're talking to, the director's voice, and the animatronics operator. So something like the eyes and other bits and pieces that needed to be manually operated from somewhere else. You can't do everything. They would be doing the movement and doing the talking, listening to what's going on. Director says, you've got to move to your left, you're going way off course, or whatever the things were going on. All that has to be fed in. So that the idea of a pre-record, if you like, where you would get all the actors around a table, you would rehearse the scene, you then go and record it, and then you would just play that back into earpieces, and then they would do it. Well, that's great. How big's the room? I mean, it's a fundamental question. You sit in a studio and you record this and it plays out beautifully. It's not like The Simpsons where you can all sit around in a big circle all in independent booths and just riff off it and play it like a radio show. You've got space. You don't know how big that space is until the set's built. So you couldn't record that pre-record until you're in the set. How would you do it? You'd have to get all those actors in to actually walk it, and then you'd have to do it. So it'd take twice as long. So I don't think there's any really there's any way of doing it. I think the nearest we got was the idea of getting the cast together in advance, reading the play, and then giving that recording to the puppeteers so they understand the nature of the performance that the A-listers are going to give it. Well, that's a whole new dynamic, because you then got to hire all those people in the first place, and don't forget they're reading it for the first time. So who's to say that that's how they would want to play it in the end? I mean, you do a read through of a film, then you go on set, it's the same damn thing, everything changes. So no, I think it was always going to be either you're going to use the recordings from the set, or it's just going to have to be re-recorded. That was my understanding, and I think if they ever do this again, that's exactly what's going to happen next time.
Do it exactly again. That leads us on to another question.
Just adding as well that we were actually casting as we went along sometimes as well. We didn't cast some of the last actors until, you know, kind of definitely February, March, April, when we were finishing in June. So.
Okay, yeah, so it wouldn't have been feasibly just possible at all to have a complete recording to playback. Do you think anything could have been done differently in pre-production to make the dialogue an easier process?
Does anybody else want that? Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think you can. Like any performance, you've got a script, you get on set, things change. Things develop, as just like I said, when you get into the space, the timing changes. The dialogue's probably been rewritten as you go. Things will come to you. No, I can't. No, I don't think there was anything they could have done. And also, I mean, I know the film had been made back in the 80s, and there was a lot of they had quite a lot of problems back then doing it. So it wasn't the first time this had been done, but pretty much the first time, certainly on this scale. So I think there might be some kind of post-mortem on the process. There certainly was going to be on the post-production, but production, no, I don't know. I can't honestly say that they could have done anything that would help that I can think of.
Tim, we spoke before about the fact that there was so much crowd that was actually given to, in very important Henson puppeteers. Do you reckon that it could have been made easier if we had had more crowd, just general crowd session?
Yeah.
As opposed to actually written lines for the Henson puppeteers. Yeah,
well, that was one of the things which Henson are very good at, that they value their puppeteers. So a lot of them had principal roles on the set, so that when it came to the revoices and they were pushed out for some A-list actors, that they were given some of the smaller roles within the series, which was great and a wonderfully loyal thing to do. Ordinarily, when we're working on those smaller background characters in a movie, unless they've actually been cast people playing it and we have to bring them in to re-record, we wouldn't bother. We would just say, well, you see those two people talking to the bar, right? We've got a group of actors we bring in, a loop group that we bring in, and they would then record those off-screen sort of babble things. In fact, we did use them on this show. But some of those voices that they would ordinarily have covered were covered by puppeteers. So we would book a puppeteer to come in 4 hours to do that character there 3 lines, and then move to another episode. Oh, you that character there, do those 2 lines. It was quite a slow process that had we had 10 people in a room, we would have just picked from the people there and then just race through it. We'd have done it a lot faster. Economically better, creatively probably better from my perspective. Loyalty bonus points for Henson, 100%. How could you knock that? They gave the work to the people who'd bust themselves, and it cost a bit of money, cost a bit of time, but it did slow us up a bit. But I think I personally would have preferred not to have to go down that route, but that's just because I know I could work quicker. But
yeah. Okay. Was picture ever recut for dialogue changes?
Yes. On a few occasions, very, very. There's a certain degree of resistance to such, but in some places it was inevitable. There was just no way we could do it.
Yeah, had to do it.
Had to change.
Someone else asks, did you start the ADR process with the final cut of the video? It was mentioned there were no waveforms as a guide. Was the sync then done all visually?
Anyone else want to take that? I'm happy to do it otherwise.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, like we said earlier, it was done visually, wasn't it? I'd say, Amy, Sam, when we're all going with the sort of movement of the mouth as opposed to waveforms of speaking. I think.
So the guide track that we were given was from the production audio, and obviously they're completely different voices, completely different rhythms, everything's completely different, so you've got nothing to match against. So it had to be done all visually. And even when the guide track was there, it sometimes wasn't even in sync because they were doing 350 cuts per 1 hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour episode, which these amazing assistants had to go through and do. It just was impossible to do again. It was all visual.
Yeah, it was literally frame by frame, wasn't it, Amy? Like I remember, I've never pressed nudge so much. It was just nudge, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, playing in slow motion.
Picture each frame until the beak was at its biggest, then go past it, smaller, then back again, so it was bigger than marker, and that's where this lump.
And that was your guide, and
I think I think did I understand the question was, did we start shooting ADR once it was a locked picture? Was that the question at the start part of it?
It was part of it, yes.
No. Absolutely not.
No,
I can tell you now.
Right.
We were shooting to visual effects schematics, like animatics. So particularly in episode 10, we might have an actor in who we had to record there and then. so that we were recording them before they'd actually done some of the visual effects shots, which they would appear in. So we were often in the studio, and you get a comment from Jeff, the writer, saying, "Oh yeah, well we need to do this here and that there." And I say, "Well, what's going on?" He says, "Oh yeah, it's completely different to the picture you got here. We've changed it." So even while even the latest cut that we might have, back in the cutting room, things had changed 24 hours earlier. We haven't got that one yet. So we were actually always lagging behind.
That was very difficult for James and I to manage, trying to get the most current picture, the most current version of the script, the most current. It was just a logistical nightmare trying to make sure that we were shooting the best we could. There were several times that we were letting go of picture before really we'd even they were cutting specific scenes for us in order that we could record that particular character.
Yeah, and one thing Joe and I had to keep on top of was if a character had come in, in January, and then they were coming back in March, we'd have to look at all the stuff they still had to record, but go back and look at previous episodes and be like, okay, have any takes changed? Have any lines changed? Do we need pickups? And some of this stuff hadn't necessarily been cut yet, so we'd kind of have to, Joe and I would maybe do like a rudimentary cut and see, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And then send any lines out that we think need re-recording. So it was
very stressful for you, James, wasn't it? In terms of just needing to get through everything, and this is the last time that we can possibly get an actor. This is the last session that we're going to ever have with him or her.
Yeah.
Have we got everything in? And there was a huge amount of pressure heaped on you and Joe.
And I think it was I think it was the normal pressure of ADR, but with just extra consideration. With ADR, you've got to get it right. You've got to find all the lines that you need to record and get them done, and you can't forget to send a line. But it was just that times 10 every day.
Okay, got another question. Right, we're going to have to start rattling because we've got quite a few left. So yes and no answers will suffice, certainly with this next one. Were there any bits of the dialogue that ended up in the show but you weren't 100% happy with them, but had to leave them because of rush or no time to polish them?
Of course not.
Yes. Yeah, there was.
Not anyone else would notice.
Yeah, there were some things that were necessarily just didn't fit quite right. Some of the lines didn't matter which way you recorded it, which way you edited it. It just was never going to sit in right. The Emperor's mouth, for example, had this kind of bounce on it, so it kind of, I don't know if it comes across here on there, but it would kind of go, "I've been looking for you," and then you'd have this kind of at the end of it, and also in the middle, because it was such a long thing and it was kind of rubbery and anyway. So there were times where you just go,
nothing you can do.
Apart from getting him to go, no, nothing.
Okay, question from Mark Spector. Hi, Mark. What was the dynamic between actor and ADR supervisors? That was yourself, Tim, Mike Warborough, and Amy, I believe, did some as well. Did the director do all the talking, or did the ADR supervisors get creatively involved?
We also had Lisa over in the States.
Yeah, Lisa Levine, yeah. Personally, yes. I can't stand doing an ADR session if I have to sit there and tick boxes.
Yeah, what's the point? There's no point us being there otherwise, is there?
No, I mean, we would. I personally, talk about actually the delivery. I think Louis and I got really quite in sync about the particular readings that he liked for each character. So I would quite often, we had a string of 10 wild track things that I would say, oh, I thought, the C and E were really good reads, and he'd go, I agree. So that was it. Other people I know, Mike Wybrow had that. I'm sure Amy, Adele, and Sam, who also took sessions, would have chipped in.
Yeah, you have to. I don't think you go tell them how to perform. I don't think you should typically do that in most ADR sessions. It's more, you're there for the technical aspect. So you're looking at the screen thinking, okay, the director really likes that read, but do you know what? That doesn't quite fit the mouth movements, and I'm never going to be able to get that to fit. So it's working on the fly that way and seeing if they can do it again, and maybe saying, oh, just take a big breath before you do that line if you don't mind, or can we try it again a little bit slower? So you have to get involved, because if not, for the editorial team, because it wouldn't necessarily be whoever records the ADR is the person that edits it. So it's your responsibility when you're in the ADR session to make as many notes as you can and say exactly what kind of reading that you thought was good. And you can only do that by vocalizing your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Right, question for James and Joe. Going back to your liaising with the picture department, what could picture do to help more in terms of handover? How do you like us to organise the audio timeline before creating the AAF for you? I can answer this one for you because we're doing a picture department assistance and sound assistance webinar in about 2 weeks' time. So we'll answer that then. This is a nice one. Roughly, how many days did you have to deliver an episode for the mix? So how long could you be working on an episode?
That was a really tricky one.
That's very different.
Yeah, it was all quite different, wasn't it?
It was a very... I think Tim Nielsen is out there listening in. In terms of deadline, as Tim was the mixer over in a re-recorded mixer and supervising sound editor out in the States, for those of you who aren't aware, the deadlines were really difficult. You know, because we were working across 10 episodes with different. It isn't like a standard TV drama where you have 2 weeks and then you're mixing for a week or combinations thereof. It wasn't as straightforward as that. They were dipping in and out of recutting episodes. So there was a timeline. There was a schedule, but the schedule, almost the moment it landed on your desk, you could turn around and stuff it in the waste paper basket because an hour later it would be different. So not on this one. This was a very elastic thing. I think the bottom line is that the delivery, we had a mixed schedule that we adhered to that was based on what Tim needed to get done in order to do his deliveries, notwithstanding general confirm more on this, is that right at the back of what we were doing were the poor devils over at Netflix in the US doing all the foreign language versions, which they couldn't do until we delivered the English language version. And it all needed to drop across the world at the same point. So I'll leave it there.
We generally were working to an idea. I mean, in theory, there should be 16 weeks before, you know, between delivery of the episode and, you know, for localization effectively. So you are locking for localization. So everything has to be locked in order that they can then move forward. And I think that we would James would be delivering scripts, which effectively would be the as broadcast script. But because that was such a work in progress with the work that was being done with the writer, and obviously Louis, and the way that it was all working and the deliveries, it was incredibly fluid. There was, we really did shorten that window for DC, because it was such a tentpole release for Netflix. So there was a lot of give from Netflix. In fact, they were incredibly helpful with Netflix. It was brilliant working with them.
Thank you. Did the director showrunners hire Rob check and approve all the dialogue before the mixes began? How did you manage to get the lines signed off?
Amy?
What did they not get signed off?
They didn't, unfortunately. I mean, I don't know if we've got it across, but the sheer volume that was recorded, it was huge amounts of audio. And then you've got a director who 24/7 is in the ADR recording studio in different countries, mainly in the UK. He did not have time to come and sit in and go through. There were certain lines, and at the beginning we got him, because he was in the same building as we were, to come and get a feel for certain characters and there. But he went over to Skywalker Ranch with Tim Nielsen, and that was the first time he really got to hear it. But luckily he liked it.
Yeah, I would get a series of update notes to deal with, which could be anything from roughly about 36 for most episodes to, I think it was 170 something notes on one episode, which meant changing dialogue, performances, finding little extra efforts, whatever it was. And Tim would, and the crew over in Skywalker would handle what they could there. But in the end, he had so much on, and you just couldn't. So it had to come back at me. So I was actually towards the end of the schedule. I'd lost everybody except Sam and James and me, and somehow or other, and Joe, you were hanging around by the skin of your teeth for part of that. I ended up having to deliver the last 2 episodes with Sam whilst doing fixes on the previous 3 or 4 at the same time, and still doing some record sessions here and there as well. So it all got a little bit kind of chaotic, but we got there.
Okay, questions come in for Tim. We know he's watching. How's your collaboration with the sound supervisor, with Mr. Nielsen? And was always your decision in terms of sync dialogue? So did you have the final say on the fitting of the lines?
Yeah. Well, well, I QC'd everything that went out to Tim, so nothing left our cutting rooms complex until it had passed by me, so I could do a final check. And then it would go to Tim, who would mix it. He would ask. I think we got into this situation where I think the first episode we sent over with everybody on their own track, and then we had to sort of put in off-screen and on-screen tracks, because some of the scenes were so complicated in order that Tim could manage the material. If we had an on-screen and off-screen tracks for each character, it just meant that he instantly knew that channel 2, or we colored different, I can't remember now, but whatever it was, he could then know that he hasn't got to play that up front, because he's managing all of the effects, all of the Foley, all of the music. There's a vast number of tracks that he's handling, so we needed some kind of help from us, not just the sync, but also just some kind of perspective built in where we could. Essentially, I listened to what feedback Tim gave us on what we were sending over, and then we adjusted as each episode went forward. And I think we got in a nice rhythm with it. But again, first stuff that Tim was seeing was when he sent it over, and first really edited versions that Louis would see were when we sent it over, it had been mixed. So I think we got a kind of good way of working. I think we were lucky that we just picked the right stuff. Anyway,
can I just add, Tim, that we were very, Louis was an incredible director, and he came from the feature film world. He has, I think he was Clash of the Titans, lots of other films as well, and he really brought the feature film mentality to this project. He really didn't view this as a TV show, and the way that a director would normally step off at a certain point for a TV show. So the attention to detail right across the board was quite incredible, whether it be, early on when I joined, he was very focused on the cut and the visual effects, and then he really turned his attention to the sound after Christmas, and the way that his laser focus on the notes and the stuff that you guys were going backwards and forwards with, it was quite incredible. The detail orientated way that he approached the whole project.
Yeah.
You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, I realised that. Probably been muted the whole time. Question: how did you organise the material in Pro Tools? So, as in how many character tracks? Oh, you should mention Snapshot, Amy, as well. Both during recording, but also in editing.
Okay, I think James, you should do the folder structure before Amy does.
No structure.
I'll do it. Amy can do the folder structure. I'll do the cues. So we had to have a very sort of dense picture of what was happening in every episode before we had any material. So using EDQ, we would, because we were using EDQ, we would have a unique character track and character ID for each character, and have every single line or effort mapped out across the whole series on those tracks. And at one point we actually had all 10 episodes in one session with all the lines of dialogue, so you could easily refer to everything there, and that became a very useful reference for absolutely everything going forward, in terms of, okay, we've now got the recordings, we need to check that they're correct against the cues and we haven't missed anything, so we would go back to that cue session. You know, even at the end, once it's been edited, we could still use that as a reference. So building that very first session with all the tracks, all the characters and everything they do queued up was just kind of the anchor, I guess, for lots of what happened going forward.
Yeah, folder structure. It's my favorite. Before, when I was brought on, oh God, in 2018, end of October, previously I'd had 10 to 11 years worth of assisting experience. So although I was brought on as an ADR editor, there wasn't anything to shoot yet because we needed to queue everything. And I quickly realised that with such a vast amount of characters, and with so many people that were flitting in and out of the project, you needed to have a filing system, which meant that anybody coming on would immediately be able to say, right, that's where that is, that's where that is. I can easily find stuff. I loathe doing anything in dates order. So all the characters had to have their own folders, and then there were actors that played multiple characters, so it's keeping them in separate ones. So it's creating a simplistic as possible filing system that anybody can kind of come along and pick up. And then you've got for the recordings, and then you've got a whole filing system for media from the picture department that you have to organise. So yeah, we kept it as simple as you can with such a giant project with so many people involved.
Thank you.
And Snapshot, sorry, yeah. Sorry, so Snapshot is, Mike Walborough told us about it, and it's basically, it's a plugin that you can just take a snapshot of the character and staple that to one of the tracks. And so you had the characters called podlings, and they all looked very, very similar at times. So if you had a snapshot, you could take a picture of it, and then you can quite easily see which podling is talking at which, and you can visually see them, so you could identify the characters.
Okay, thank you. I guess this one's for Tim. What about audio for Fizzgig and the Podlings? Who recorded it and how was it scripted?
Right, scripted. It was written by Jeff. There is a Podling language, just like Game of Thrones. That's Dothraki and High Valyrian, and I've managed to forget most of it. The Podling characters were played predominantly by Henson's Puppeteer group because they knew what to do. Fizzgig himself was played by, Gemma, correct me if I'm right, it's Dave, was it Dave? He did the original Fizzgig voice in the film back in the day, so he came back, he was brought in. He was actually recorded over at Skywalker.
Yeah, Dave Goltz, he was recorded.
Dave, that's
yeah.
Sorry, stupid. I can't remember everyone's name, but Tim brought him into Skywalker where they knew him and had worked with him before, and I believe got him in there and recorded it, so he knew exactly what to do and he did his thing. The Podling language, like I said, well, we all did a little bit. It's going, it's all that sort of thing. I think all of us probably had a go at being Podlings at some point or other, but Jeff would script it. It was a proper language. And
it's in Croatian.
There is.
Jeff said it was Croatian.
Yeah,
there you go.
Bible. There's a show Bible which Netflix hold, and I believe that they have a full dictionary of Podling language. Yeah.
It is real. So that's how that was done.
So if it was in Croatian, what happens with the Croatian foreign language?
No, it was based on Croatian, but they didn't use Croatian words. But they liked Jeff had said they liked how it sounded and the dialects and how it flowed. So.
Okay.
And Jeff the writer, sorry.
Quick one for Mike and Lottie again. What kind of mics did he use? Was it just the Neumann?
Predominantly, yeah, it was just the 9U87. I did have an MKH50 quite tight on, which we ran as a snoop. But in terms of what we delivered, it was, unless asked, it was just the non-U87, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Question from Milos. Hi, Milos. How many of you were able to attend the mix, given how deeply you were all involved in crafting the dialogue? None.
None of us there. It was all done at Skywalker, and we were all in London still working. And either we were still working on the show or left the show. So, no, we never saw any of the mix.
Just by chance, like, I'm pure.
Oh, sorry.
I went, I didn't attend any of the mixes at all, but I went to Skywalker last year and spent an afternoon with Tim Nielsen, which was great. So I got to see some of the finished work, which was awesome. And sent a picture to everyone of me and Tim, which was really surreal because we'd all worked remotely for months together. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
I'm just having a look through. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Oh, actually don't, because we'll never get off. Adele, you recommended watching as many films as possible and knowing the classics. Question to all of you, what are some of the best films of all time in terms of sound design that you'd recommend to watch?
God. Good question.
Well, if you watch that documentary, every film that is mentioned in that Making Waves, The Art of Cinematic Sound, is a starting point. Yeah. Apocalypse Now, Godfather, you know, all those classics.
The conversation.
Yeah.
Castaway.
They're all in there.
Dude, where's my car? Did you guys work closely with sound design for treatment of voices or the creature vocals?
Sorry, my internet's gone funny. You all sound like robots.
How appropriate. We did not. In fact, the creature voices were all done by Tim Nielsen and the team in Skywalker. What we did do is record some of the material that they would then use to create those voices. So the big spiders and
the Ascendancy.
The Ascendancy, yes. Thank you, James. And some of the other character voices, we did a recording which was then processed by the sound design team over in Skywalker. So we didn't get involved in that directly. We just gave them the raw materials.
Thank you. Quick question from Richard Addis. Hi, Richard. Dialogue track was amazingly dense. It was a lot less dense. The one you heard is the one that was sent. Listening to the final mix, how much do you think of the original dialogue was in it? I mean, I'm thinking of episode 4 with a banquet, and Mr. Nielsen, feel free to type a message.
The banquet scene is a great one, actually, because Joe and I had a lovely time dealing with that one. Joe trying to conform it. It had been recut, I can't tell you how many times, and re-scripted. James will attest multiple times. I would get a wild track of background material that was to just put in the Emperor just chomping away, other people doing. Every single character had a massively long track, which we put together and built it, and then they recut it, and literally it was like 52 card pickup. All the shots went into different places, so nothing that attached to anything else made sense anymore. So I think I rebuilt that scene about 3 times, and I actually finally sent it to Tim Nielsen when he said, "I gotta have it." And then he told me that he chucked out most of it because it was so dense.
Yeah, he said here,
I could have killed him.
Banquet scene probably has less than 20% of the written and performed dialogue in the final mix.
There you go. There you go.
That's like 1,000 man-hours gone.
Right. Wow.
Painful.
It's like, hey, Tim.
Brutal.
It was fair comment, though. It was very, very busy. Too much.
Which voice actors were the most fun to work with when recording?
Well, we'll take one each. We'll take one each. Go on, Amy.
Keegan. Oh God, what's his name? He was my
that's
favourite.
such good fun with him.
That's
She can't remember his
That's
name.
the one. Michael Kiki. That one. He was brilliant because he's a comic as well. He was just lots of fun to work with.
How about Adele?
Yeah. That was
I did a session with Louise Gold. Was it Louise Gold, the puppeteer? Yeah, she was great because she was on the original thing. She was like a legend in Henderson world, so it was quite amazing seeing her because she was so physical in the session as well, which was I really enjoyed seeing her do.
Sam?
It's quite hard because I only did a few sessions. I mean, what's his name? Isaac, who played one of the Skeksis.
Jason Isaac.
Jason
Isaacs, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. I mean, it was just very interesting to see how the different actors worked with the characters. So yeah, that's a hard one.
It is. From my own perspective, well, Taran was always good fun. Natalie Emmanuel I'd known from Game of Thrones, so that was kind of easy. That was just like carrying on. As was Nia Hughes, who found the whole process rather peculiar. She struggled with it, but we got her there in the end. Jason, the little known fact that I gave Jason Isaacs his very first film role. There you go. And in fact, on the day that I met him, I gave him a whole load of photos from the film that I'd done with him. And then Anya Taylor-Joy was always good fun. It's not often you're standing outside a studio and an actress you've never met before throws her arms around you, gives you a huge hug and says, it's really nice to meet you. But that's the kind of kid she is. She was great. To be honest, they were all good fun. They were all a little bit kind of out of their depth a little bit, I think. And so they were looking for help. But they all sort of warmed to it. Benedict Wong was always good fun too. Really.
I think also, yeah, because the material was so wild, they kind of had to be wild with it, didn't they?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, they did. Yeah,
that was.
They all got a kick out of it. I don't think anyone really got tired of it or.
I remember Anya was dancing around the theatre in between takes. So
yeah, she was just a happy kid,
full of energy, and which was great.
Yeah.
I have to say, hers was some of the easiest to fit as well.
Yeah,
she was amazing.
Terrific stuff.
I think Benny Wong went
in
7 jugs of water between each.
Yeah.
In terms of stats, for me, I would always look at things in terms of stats, and it felt like that. There were certain people who were very, very slow, and there were certain people who were incredibly fast. But Mark Hamill is a standout for. My good God, how fast was that guy at ADR? Doing not ADR, but this. He really he got his voice, and he really just, and all the stuff that came back that I listened to, I just thought, wow, okay, you managed to do that in half the time that everybody else managed to do it.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
The easiest person to edit by far for me was Mark Hamill's character.
Well, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you.
His agent said, "Oh, he's fast. He's fast," and we would get that from quite a few different agents. They'd say, "Oh yeah, and they really know how what to do in ADR," but so I kind of took it with a grain of salt. But when the timings would come back, it was like, oh, wow, okay, maybe we need to book half the time next time.
Yeah,
it made my job a total nightmare because all the predictions on how many lines people would record would just go out the window because halfway through a session I'd get a message being like, hey, do we have any more cues? It's like, no, better make some.
Okay, thank you. Quick one, Mac or PC? Everyone was on a Mac. That's answered. If or when a second series happens and you're all on it, do you think you will approach anything differently?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a game plan, but I'm not going to put it out publicly in case I don't get the job. But yes, I do. I have a structure in my, not written down anywhere, but in my mind of how the crew should work based on our experiences of how season 1 went. And I believe it can be done more efficiently, but it was a massive learning curve, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Someone's asked, where can we find more of these webinars? They're going to happen every week on www.theroughassembly.com. Have a look on there. Next week, I'll tell you about it at the end, which is coming very soon. But yeah, we're doing sound and picture ones. Did you get involved with any of the reversions of dubbing for other languages?
No, not exactly. Well, James did in terms of supplying script. Well, James can talk.
Yeah, what we had to do was send sort of like a master final script or over to Netflix, and that would be you know, all the final cues that we had got with any writing revisions, etc., all up to date in there, and then send it off. But you know, changes would happen in the mix. Lines would be muted, maybe shifted, not necessarily changed, but you know, things would change. So it was very much handed over as a this is as shot rather than as mixed, and they were two different things. So yeah, we got involved up to a point.
We were constantly being chased by the foreign versioning and language localization people. That it really was that, you know, literally at the moment that a script was finished by James, we would be sending it off. They were big, but they are very used to doing this kind of thing on a mass scale. I mean, this is what they do. So they were able to. I do remember talking to one of my colleagues over at Pinewood and saying, seriously, are they going to manage to do all this? Because it's taken us this long to be able to get this far. And they said, absolutely, this is just what we do. 16 weeks is fine. You know, it was quite an impressive task to get it into 30-something languages in the amount of time that they had.
Okay, last question. I've just got a bit of a few points to tell you. Basically, anyone whose question hasn't been answered, if you write down the email address, post-sound@theruffassembly.com, that'll come through to us and we'll carry on answering your questions for you, because I know we've missed a load. We're going to do some dialogue editing and ADR editing ones as well. So a lot of the questions you've asked, if you tune in again to those ones, they will be answered at that point. So we'll just look at, once the lockdown ends, do you think you'll go back to working in the same way as you did before, or do you think you'll do more projects from home, and will this lockdown change the industry?
Crikey, that's a whole bunch of questions. One is, I'll answer for me to start with, just get the ball rolling. I already work from home. And in fact, I work from home most of the time, except when I'm recording ADR or mixing. In fact, Dark Crystal was the first time I've worked at a facility since 2012, I think. So it was the first time I was actually based anywhere and had a team that were not only had a team, but actually had a team that I was on site with for most of the time. Will it affect the industry? Well, I think it's already moving towards a home-based editing process. And will there be any changes? Inevitably, this business is organic. I mean, it's always changing. So whether those changes would come as a result of what's happening now, whether that's just natural progression, there will be changes. Nothing sits still. It's changed enormously in my career.
But then there's also the fundamental of recording an actor in an ADR studio is we've all been trying to record remotely, which is a whole different topic to talk about.
Let's not do that.
Let's just not go down that route. But there's nothing that will ever be better than an actor and a director and the recordist and the ADR supervisor in a room and just doing the thing.
I believe so. You couldn't possibly have done Dark Crystal remote recording.
The whole time, no.
Just forget it.
Did we liaise with the Ditton on set? No, we didn't, did we?
I don't think so.
No, we didn't. We didn't get involved until after they'd shot. So, well, I did some voice casting while they were still shooting in March 2018. But no liaison with set.
Such as EdiLoad or EdiQ, if pursuing a career in ADR recording and editing,
yes.
Which other software would you recommend? So yes, absolutely, EdiQ. It's the industry standard at the minute, and Pro Tools to just cut the ADR.
Someone says, who was your favourite Puppeteers voice? that you didn't want to change initially?
I think Deets was a phase.
Yeah, deep.
Right?
Deet. Yeah, Natalie Emmanuel had a very tough job following the lass who played, whose name I've gone and forgotten, but she was in Derry Girls.
Cool.
She wasn't one of the principals in Derry Girls, but she was one of the schoolgirls. And I wish I could remember her name because she was terrific, and she had this lovely soft Belfast accent that she had, which made it was really quite weird. And when we replaced it, it's not that Natalie didn't do a good job, it's just you get quite attached to something. I think that's the one voice that I think I miss.
I really liked the Emperor. I thought the way the Emperor was done was really, really funny and great. But who was it that replaced the Emperor? Was it
Jason Isaacs?
Yeah, what he did was just totally different, but equally amazing. So it was really interesting to see the difference. You could have two performances that were in their own way sort of perfect, and you just have to go with one.
Becky Henderson was
Thank you. That's it, Becky Henderson. Thank you very much. Yeah.
But of course, Natalie did a fantastic job as well.
Oh yeah. No, it's just you got used to a particular voice and felt it was weird when you change because.
Well, that was a hard thing about this. You live with a guide track of completely different voices that we then do replace, and you kind of not only get used to a different voice but a different performance. So it is a weird adjustment period.
Yeah, I think the only ones that stuck was Augur and Hupp, who were the same voices.
Yeah, and I think Lottie was a crying baby at one point.
She was. Lottie was a crying baby.
Yeah.
She was. I can't remember the character's name now, but
she looks like a podling. Lottie.
She's typecast now, though. She has to be crying baby in every film.
Spiritin' Baby.
Spiritin' Baby, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, how about we take this as the final question? Someone wants to know what your favourite spots for lunch are in Soho. Go on.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a fabulous one.
Everyone
Just get lunch.
Everyone just goes to Pret. Like,
oh, come on.
Sad but true, yeah.
Great place on what's that one with the it's like sushi roll, but it's like a sushi.
Oh, is it cat?
It's opposite Bodine's.
Catty roll.
Oh no, that place is so good.
It is totally.
What's it called? It's amazing.
What's that poke place we went to, Joe? That's a really good.
Oh yeah, that's good on Darbley Street.
Yeah, on Darbley, there's a poke.
You're so metropolitan, honestly.
Berwick Street
Good for you.
Berwick Street Market is always good.
Yeah, Berwick Street Market.
Yeah, Franco Manco for pizza.
You'll find Tim in Bruno's.
Yeah, probably.
Well, the good thing is, anywhere you go with Tim, people think he's Heston Blumenthal, though.
Yeah, I've been photographed.
I remember going to lunch with you actually, and someone just couldn't take their eyes off you, and you said hi and walked out, and they said, "Did you know them?" You went, "No, they think I'm Heston."
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
I think. Does anyone know papaya?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
That just it's like a kilogram of food each time. So good.
I've just got a quick round of thank you, all of you. You've been amazing. So lovely to see all your lovely faces after almost a year. If I could just ask everyone remaining in the audience, would you write a quick few words in the chat box, just where you're from, which uni you're from, where in the world you are, that just for my own personal interest, and any ideas for any future webinars that you'd like to see, because I mean, we're talking about doing them every week for the lockdown, but I think if there's a demand, we'll just keep going. We've got the best industry professionals in the UK and the world, some of them, and we're just so happy for you to pick our brains. So I think we'll just keep these running. So write down ideas for future webinars in the chat box. Tune in next week for TV drama editing Q&A with picture editors Dan Roberts, Meredith Lees and Simon Smith. That'll be a really interesting one with them. This webinar has been recorded and it'll be put up on the website I mentioned, theroughassembly.com, in due course. Back to are running an introductory offer to join. If you give the switchboard a call, if you're not working, so if you're a student or out of work, it's £5 a month or £7.50 a month introductory rate. If you are working, give membership a call on 0207 346 0900. For members, there's 2 webinars coming up next week about financial situations. Understanding Schedule D on Monday and Understanding Limited Companies on Thursday. They've been amazingly useful. I've had money in my bank from being furloughed. I'm a limited company. So any questions like that, just fire them and we'll do our best to answer them. There's a couple of surveys going to be put around. We'd love for everyone to join a Post House survey and Diversity in Post survey. They'll be hitting your inboxes soon. So please fill them in and get those back. Other than that, thank you, everyone. It's been so interesting. You've just been amazing, amazing to work with and lovely, lovely people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Questions in the chat that are still unanswered. Can we type answers, or is that, how does that work?
Yeah, I think until Nia presses the red button, feel free.
Oh, look at where all these people are from. This is amazing.
I know, yeah, it is.
Look at that. Karachi. Wow.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be really interesting to see where everyone was from and whether people were students or professionals or whatever.
This is crazy.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thanks everyone for taking the time.
Nia asks, can you ask them to let me take a picture of you? I'm going to say yes for them all, that's fine.
I'm okay with it.
Look gorgeous, Mike.
Good try, Tim.
I'd have known that, I'd have had my hair cut.
I had my hair cut.
Oh, Rebecca Wallace from Savalas. I love Savalas. Sound excellent.
Oh, Savalas, good friends.
Ah.
St Albans, hello. Oh, hello, Louise. It's you.
Hi, Louise.
Louise is on in a few weeks talking about assistant things.
While everybody's still out there, can I just kind of shout out for my website? Is that all right, Steve?
Of course you can, yeah.
Thank you. I've got a website, www.post-super.com. We're doing a knowledge base which should have important information about how everything kind of fits into post-production as it is. So it's primarily for post-supervisors and coordinators, but I think it's a really interesting resource for anybody who wants to know how everything fits together in post-production. So.
And what was our website again, please, Gemma?
www.post-super.com.
Super, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to say thanks to Tim Nielsen for looking after us and making a great job of all our work.
Yes.
And to Chris Durfee, for, if he's still around, for giving us some dialogues to work from in the first place. What a thankless task to know that everything you're going to record is just not going to
when
be...
would that happen? That wouldn't happen any other time, would it?
I think he described it to me as the most expensive guide track in the world. And I would like to also say he's not with us tonight, Mike Wabro, whose endeavours in getting this started and completed are without doubt stupendous. So you should get a mention.
And Nina Hartstone as well.
Nina Hartstone,
yeah.
Oscar winner.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
We wouldn't let her on.
She's too expensive.
But yeah, she's too good for us now.
She's also had quite a lot of publicity over the last
Yeah, she's had enough. We can leave her out. That's fine.
Yeah. And she's coming on another one as well in a few weeks, so that's right.
And thank you, Steve, for putting this together.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Hey,
Absolutely my pleasure. It's been lovely.
James typing frantically. Is that you, James?
Sounds like he's queuing.
I'm finding that
queuing.
I'm finding
Season
that I
2.
I can't do two things at once, so I actually can't answer this question because I'm like things are coming into my ears, so I just can't.
Yes, any of the panel who can see any questions pertinent to them, feel free to answer them while the box is still up. I'll take a copy of it as well. Yeah, big thanks to Beck too. The work they're doing at the minute with the pandemic situation, they're absolutely going bananas with pushing government, pushing legislation, changing legislation, getting the government to clarify things. They've done an amazing job, and they're right at the front with a few other companies and a few other charities. The support they've given is amazing. They've really just exploded with activity. So they've been amazing. Thank you, Nia, for looking after us all at the branch, because we're a hopeless bunch of misfits. She does a great job of getting everyone together as well. And the rest of the committee too, who work extremely hard in their spare time.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks so much for your time and your kindness, and for doing this with Beck too. It's much appreciated. And Steve has done an incredible job over the last couple of years, from putting that rate card together to putting these panels on. So well done, Steve. And Alex and Joe, who's also on the committee. So thank you so much. I'm gonna close it now. Okay.
Okay. Plug, Nia.
Thanks, Nia.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.